Notre Dame has an experienced and talented quarterback in Sam Hartman. Ohio State has a big-time defensive lineman, big-time defensive ends. Notre Dame also protects Sam Hartman with some future first-round offensive linemen. So a lot of talk today and a lot of talk yesterday from Notre Dame's coaches, today from Ohio State's coaches, about getting after the quarterback or protecting the quarterback, depending on which team you're talking about in that circumstance. Steven, is this a game, Ohio State at Notre Dame on Saturday, is it a game Ohio State can win if this defensive line doesn't have what would probably have to be so far its best game of the year?
Can I say yes with, like, the least amount of uncertainty around that yes possible? Like, no conviction around it? Because they got an offense like they have. They can also just run up. I think if it turns into a shootout, Ohio State is going to win this game for sure. But to get to the point of why we're asking this question here is, do you think Joe Alt or Blake Fisher is as good as a tackle as Marvin Harrison is as good of a wide receiver?
No.
Okay. And
do I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is as good as Joe, or I think Joe Alt is as good as Marvin Harrison Jr.? No, but at doing his job, no, but it's close. Joe Alt's a top 10 pick.
So
he's very, very good.
He's very good. But the answer is no, right? The answer is no. Okay. And I thought Marvin Harrison Jr., Joey Porter last year, that's the reason I'm getting around to that. I think Joey Porter in Penn State last year, Marvin Harrison had 10 catches for 100 and something yards, but I thought they at least made things tough. He just showed up when it mattered because he's Marvin Harrison Jr., and that's what you do when it matters is you show up. And that's what I'm thinking here. And Joey Porter, there were some people who thought he was a first-round pick. Caleb King might be a first-round pick this year. Joey Porter ends up going in the second round. I think that is the floor for what this defensive line needs to be against Notre Dame, especially JT and Jack Sawyer. I think they need to show their NFL players, and who better to do that against than a guy who is a for sure top 10 pick and Blake Fisher, who is also a first-round draft pick. So if they are as good as what Joey Porter was and Caleb King against Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, I think that's fine. Because anything more than that, you're expecting them to do something that they have not shown on a consistent basis yet.
Maybe the better way for me to ask that question, Andrew, is can Ohio State affect Sam Hartman the way it wants to if it has to do more than just use a four-man rush to do it? Is it playing into maybe his hands if you have to bring too much extra guys, too much blitzing? Is it exposing them if these defensive ends and this defensive line can't create more pressure on their own?
Yes, but I think we're also maybe looking at this a little bit backwards because Notre Dame, for all the talk about Sam Hartman, for all the talk about what he's given them that, frankly, they didn't have last year. I mean, you mentioned the stat last week where it was like, if you take out the first play of the game from Notre Dame versus Ohio State last year, Tyler Buckner threw for like 50 yards. Like, it was ridiculous. Like, they could not throw the ball. So I think that there's a lot of talk just placed on Sam Hartman because, hey, look, they have this new shiny thing who's been really good so far this year. But Notre Dame is still a run-first team. Like, I think we're looking at the defensive line and saying, like, oh, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, you gotta impact the quarterback. Well, it's also the guys up the middle, too, with Hall, with Williams, with that entire group that is going to play in the interior. They've got to play well as well. And I think the answer – I originally was going to say no, that Ohio State can win if the defensive line doesn't play his best game. But now I'm kind of thinking yes, the more that I think about this, because this defensive line – if you don't stop the run against Notre Dame, you're in trouble. And I understand that Ohio State is more talented. I understand that, like Steven said, if it gets in a shootout, nobody's going to take Notre Dame to win that. Like, if you told me that the over-under of this game was like 70, like, hey, we're hitting 70 or we're hitting 75, yeah, Ohio State. Nobody's going to say that. But if Notre Dame can get the ball moving, you kill the clock a little bit, the game shortens, and all of a sudden now – you have to start creeping some linebackers up. You have to start creeping some safeties up. And then that's where Sam Hartman becomes so dangerous over the top, because then you can go over the top because you're going to have a one-on-one matchup over the top, or a guy that's caught flat-footed in the secondary, and that's a problem. So I think we may be looking at this as like the defensive ends have got to play so well because you've got to get after Sam Hartman. But I think the defensive ends and the defensive line as a whole have got to do a really good job defending the run, because if you don't do a really good job defending the run, Notre Dame can kind of have their way, and then it's a problem for Ohio State's defense.
Yeah, I think I agree with a lot of that. I think if Notre Dame is in a lot of third and long situations, the way that they approach offense, the way that Sam Hartman is a quarterback, I think it probably plays into JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer and everybody else's hands more than any game Ohio State's played this year. If it's not happening, then they've got bigger problems than what the defensive ends are doing. Any team that is getting a lot of third and short opportunities is going to be in a position to strike you, and you're going to be vulnerable to losing that game. So I think it's a lot more about what's happening on early downs that maybe doesn't have anything to do with the pass rush than what Ohio State does with the pass rush later. But I do think that when they're in those situations, Notre Dame is going to give you that opportunity. It's going to take that trade. We've seen it in other games Notre Dame's played this year, where either it's play action or it's just long developing pass plays that Ohio State has not necessarily faced in these first few games. They're going to take that gamble more often than any team Ohio State's played so far, and Ohio State has to make them pay for that gamble more than any team that they've played so far. A lot more talk about that on Buckeye Talk this week. And get the text 614-350-3315. News, analysis, other updates every day from cleveland.com.